If you're just starting with acrylic paints, this is the perfect project for you. It doesn't require any specific skills. You get to immerse yourself in the process, play around with colors, and at the end you get a beautiful result. I decided to go with a pink sunset, so I'm choosing purples, pinks, peach colors, a little bit of yellow, some white of course. I'm putting a piece of masking tape here just to mark the horizon and to guide me during the painting process. You can choose to put your horizon way higher or lower. I just wanted a very symmetrical kind of composition, so I'm putting the horizon in the middle. The first thing to do is create a gradient. I don't know if you've ever noticed it, but at sunset, most of the colors are at the horizon line. So the super pigmented pinks and orange and darker, more vibrant colors will be at the horizon and they will fade out into the sky to a lighter shade. In my case, I'm choosing to put a stripe of purple at the horizon, fading it to pink, then to peach, and to a lighter shade all the way up to the page to almost a white. At the top of my page, the colors will be lighter but also a little bit more muted. Whereas the horizon, I could put a lot of pigment, have it super saturated and vibrant. If I was to create the same landscape, but instead of a sunset, I wanted a beautiful daytime kind of landscape, I would do the opposite. So all the saturated colors would be at the top of the page, so a super saturated sky blue, fading it to white or to a super light gray towards the horizon line. You could even do a companion piece to this piece and try that for yourself. So put whatever colors you're choosing. If you're choosing reds and orange or whatever colors you're choosing, invert the sky and keep everything else the same and you'll see the different feel, and it could be a really cool two painting set to have. When it comes to blending acrylics, sometimes it could get a little bit difficult just because it dries super fast. I made an entire video on my best tips to blend acrylic easily, so I'll link it at the very end of this if ever you're curious and you want to watch that. Working fast is good because acrylic tends to dry fast, but having a bigger brush is also a really cool trick to blend everything together. At the beginning, I use a smaller brush to put the different colors where I want them, and I blend them together to a certain point. But at the end, you can go over your sky with a super big damp brush and brush over it, and everything will blend together. Obviously, you have to do this while the paint is super wet, but using a very large brush works really well. When it comes to the different shades in the sky, clouds and pops of colors, I kind of go randomly. But if you find that it gets a bit complicated or that things get a little bit messy, you can just keep your sky as a full gradient. It'll look super nice regardless. Or you can put just a few pops of colors in your sky, minimal horizontal lines. In the lighter shades, you could put a few lines here and there of pinks, oranges, or even red, and kind of fade it out with your finger or with a drier brush. And in the darker, more saturated colors, you could put a bit of white or light yellows. You can take a long time building up your sky the way you want to, but you can also do it super minimally, super fast and spontaneously, and move on to the next step. For the bottom part of the landscape, I'll be using a lot of black with a little bit of dark blue. You don't have to use blue, you can use just black, but you could also use any dark color. It could be burgundy, dark green, dark navy blue, super dark purple. Anything that's super dark to create a tree line will work perfectly well. One thing to be careful about, and it's a mistake that I made in this painting, so don't make the same mistake that I did, was that I created my tree line a little bit too high, and I covered the purple stripe of horizon that I put down. So it's better to build up your tree line lower than what you think you would want it. So I'm bringing up the black all the way up to my purple, then I start creating my tree line. Right now I'm working on an 11 by 14 piece of paper. And depending on the size of your surface, if you're working really small or a lot larger, you have to adjust the size of your paintbrush. It sounds obvious, but it might not be as obvious as you're creating your painting. Sometimes it's something you forget. To create the trees, I suggest that you use a smaller brush that you might think you need. I usually work on larger scales, so when I created my tree line, I was using a paintbrush that was slightly too big for what I wanted. So I wasn't getting the trees the way I wanted them, and that's why I kept building them up, because my brush was basically too big. and it ended up covering the purple. But by using a smaller detailing brush with a little bit of black or dark color, you can get your treetops, especially the treetops, to be very thin, and that's the key to having a really nice tree line. You start super thin at the top, and once you get to the bottom, you can get a bigger paintbrush and kind of stipple your paint. You want the treetops to be skinny, very irregular, so higher, lower, not very symmetrical. And the best way to do it is to use a small detailing brush. You can also take a stiff fan brush for this. Make sure it's a smaller fan brush and to use only the corner of your paintbrush. As a final touch, I decided to use some dark blue in my black to have just pops of colors to give a little bit more texture in that bottom part of my composition, but it's really not necessary. You can leave it as is, fully black if you want to. I personally like the effect. I think it gives it a little bit more depth, a little bit of texture, but still keep it subtle and not take away too much from the black. Creating little paintings like this from imagination is super rewarding. You can play around with the horizon line. You can do it slanted. You could do it at the very bottom or all the way up to the top. You can play around with colors. You could try a green sky if you want to. Anything goes, and that's what's fun about it. You can really discover a bunch of things about color and composition this way. And if you want tips to blend acrylic paint, here's the video I was talking about. Tag me on Instagram if you decide to recreate this. I would love to see your painting. Thanks for watching.